Out of the Supreme Court, the court just ruled that the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan is unconstitutional. The White House estimates the plan would have affected 37 million Americans and was set to forgive up to $20,000 in federal loans per qualifying borrower. The plan has been on hold since 6 Republican-led states who claimed the program violated President Biden's executive power took the administration to court.
Good morning, Nate, and welcome to the Supreme Court Plaza. As you said, in a 6-3 decision from the Supreme Court, writing on behalf of that majority, Chief Justice John Roberts addresses that question you raised right at the top, Nate. Did the HEROES Act, passed by Congress in 2003, give the Biden administration's Education Department the right to modify or amend that act to provide this student loan forgiveness? The court, through a 6-3 majority, says absolutely not.
Our ultra-right-wing Supreme Court is working very hard to make your life more difficult this week, striking down Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. Now, millions of people, myself included, were already approved to have some of their debt forgiven. CNN reported on this, saying the court's decision means that borrowers targeted by Biden's plan will receive no relief. Monthly payment obligations that were paused during the COVID-19 pandemic will be due starting in October. Good luck getting my money. The White House has said that it received 26 million applications to the program before a lower court in Texas issued a nationwide injunction in November, and that 16 million of those applications had been approved for relief. Now, President Biden's going to address the nation this afternoon, but he did release a statement which in part is calling out the hypocrisy of Republicans. So from that statement, the hypocrisy of Republican elected officials is stunning. They had no problem with billions in pandemic-related loans to businesses, including hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of dollars for their own businesses. And those loans were forgiven. When it comes to providing relief to millions of hardworking Americans, they did everything in their power to stop it. And I'm glad that he's calling them out by their names because he's right. And we're gonna call them out by their names too. Take a look at this list of Republicans who had their loans forgiven. Matt Gaetz, $475,000. Marjorie Taylor Greene, $180,000. Greg Pence, $79,000. Vern Buchanan, $2.8 million. Kevin Hern, $1 million. Roger Williams, $1.4 million. Brett Guthrie, $4.3 million. And the list continues on. And those were not even the only Republicans who had their loans forgiven. Because CNBC reported that billionaires, country clubs, private jet companies, and Kanye West all received millions in government funding under the Paycheck Protection Program, according to the Small Business Administration. Altogether, more than 400 country clubs and golf resorts received PPP funding. But to get back to to move away from the PPP loans and get back into student debt in this specific case, let's talk about the facts of the case. So the basis of Biden's student loan forgiveness hindered on the HEROES Act, as you heard in that clip. New York Times reported that a version of the law enacted in 2001 after the September 11th attacks gave the Secretary of Education the power to, quote, waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision to protect borrowers affected by terrorist attacks. Now, ironically, it was Trump who paused student loan repayments in the first place. In 2003, Congress expanded that power to include borrowers affected by a war or other military operation or a national emergency. March 2020, President Donald J. Trump declared that the coronavirus pandemic was a national emergency, and his administration invoked the HEROES Act to pause student loan repayment requirements and to suspend the accrual of interest. Now, Biden planned to switch gears by ending the program payment repause, but forgiving up to $20,000 for qualified borrowers. I feel like I lost $20,000 today. But the Supreme Court ruled that he's not allowed to do that. But there are people pointing out, and rightfully so, that there's other avenues that Joe Biden can take to forgive student debt.
We talked to Persis Yu, a lawyer at the Student Borrower Protection Center, to explain the legal mechanisms Biden can still utilize.
The administration's hands are absolutely not tied in this circumstance. There are many tools that the secretary can use. In particular, the secretary already has the authority, and the president can direct the secretary to use the authority to cancel student loans under the Higher Education Act, under the provisions which allow them to settled, compromise, modify, and waiver any of the debts in their portfolio. This is a tool that the Department of Education regularly uses in the maintenance of its portfolio. In fact, we've seen instances where, for example, Secretary Betsy DeVos canceled certain borrowers some amounts of student loan debt during the last administration. The president can direct the secretary to take these actions to ensure that student loan borrowers are still given the debt relief that they desperately need right now.
And I and many other people are hoping that that's what Biden's announcement this afternoon is going to be. Dara, we've seen some horrible decisions coming out of the Supreme Court lately. It just feels like one punch in the gut after another.
Yeah, they're really working hard to destroy everything. Any semblance of progress we've made as a country, they're really working hard on backtracking for us. It's extremely disappointing, to be honest. Like, it's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's especially frustrating because the argument that so many conservatives have is that, you're giving debt relief to the richest people in this country, people who have advanced degrees, people like me who have a lot of student loans from going to law school. But the reality, the fact of the matter is, this is a targeted student loan debt forgiveness program to people who made less than, I think it was $120,000 a year, people who were, qualified to have Pell Grants. The poorest students are the people who are going to benefit from this. So it just really feels like a slap in the face to the, people who worked really hard to go to college and now, are just drowning in debt.
It seems to be a bit oppressive, and I hate to bring race into it, but there's definitely a heavy undertone of racism behind all of this, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at the demographics of who is disproportionately impacted by student debt burdens. It's Black students, it's Black women, especially students that weren't able even to finish getting their degree because they had to drop out because of the exorbitant cost of college nowadays.